The 70 countries or so.
By the way, this is hilarious because Donald Trump, for some weird reason that I simply cannot understand, because Donald Trump is like at least close to China, close enough to China, and has dealt with China in the past, thought that China would just like back down and call him. And I don't know why he thought this. And now they're going back and forth, and China's like, we're not backing down from this. You want to fucking play this game? Like, we can hold out.
So, I'm curious, though, under what conditions at this point would President Trump talk to President Xi about tariffs?
Well, look, I just spoke to the president about this, and he believes that China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight. But the president believes that Xi and China want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get that started. And the president also wanted me to tell all of you that if China reaches out to make a deal, he'll be incredibly gracious.
Oh, now he's going. Yesterday he was saying China's paranoid. Yesterday he was talking about how Xi wants to call me. He just doesn't know what my number is. Today he's like, Xi, I would be so gracious. Here's my phone number. I'm just, oopsie, did I leak my phone number? Come on, Xi. For good old time's sake, remember my granddaughter knows Mandarin. Come on. Xi Jinping. Give me a call. Give me a call. Xi, call me. Call me Xi. Xi. Please, Xi, I've learned how I've learned how to speak Mandarin. Come on, Xi, Tian Shang Tia Yang Hong Ya Hong Tong Tong E. Xi Shong De Taiyang Xi Mao So Dong E. Dao Ling Dao Woman De Xi Feng E. Renmin Fashion Dao Zhang Zhou Zhou Zhu Rain. Xi, call me Xi. Yeah, Xi Oe. Yeah, Xi Oa. Renmin Fashion Dang Zhang Zhou Zhou Zhu Rain. Believe it, Xi.
But he's going to do what's best for the American people.
So China has to call first?
The Chinese want to make a deal. They just don't know how to do it. But the president will be implementing these 104% tariffs on China tonight.
And under what conditions?
Wait, come on, dude. Mandarin, Trump talking Mandarin is a banger, and you know it. I've had two bangers on the China stuff. The one is like the Chinese hog that hates affirmative action for the Uyghurs and the Tibetans. And the second Chinese banger now is Trump speaking Mandarin. Ni hao, Xi. Ni hao. Tensions between China and the United States continue to rise as China blasts JD Vance over Chinese peasants' comments and vows to fight against tariffs. As Trump threatens further tariffs, Vice President JD Vance stirred controversy with his comments that the U.S. was borrowing money from Chinese peasants. I like that a big part of, like, look. I'm gonna say something that's like not technically in line with dialectical materialism, okay? I do think that people, especially sometimes governments, can be motivated by other external factors as well, or internal factors as well, beyond the way that history moves. Okay, beyond certain materialist frameworks. I will say that there is, not to get too libbed up and not to be too much of a fake socialist and blaspheme here, but I think one of the major motivators for the Chinese government is also overcoming the century of humiliation. And when you say things like Chinese peasants are who we are borrowing money from, that I think probably makes it virtually impossible for the Chinese government to look at that and go, okay, we're going to come to the table and treat you as peers. Because when you look at a country that was able to improve their material conditions over the course of a relatively short period of time, when it's at its highest point of prosperity, when they look back at their century of humiliation and look to the future as a century of prosperity, and you got a declining empire and its stupid fucking leadership being like, saying racist shit, being like, oh, these are just Chinese peasants, I feel like that probably makes it less likely that these guys will ever come to the fucking table. That's it. Like, if your goal is we will serve Europe our salmonella chicken and they will like it, they will eat it and they will like it. They will take our hormoned beef and they will eat it and they will like it. Okay? It's just not. And also simultaneously turn around and say things like, we are going to decouple trade from China. And everyone will like it after we designed global trade to constantly rely on places like China to give us cheap commodities at the cost of ruining domestic labor capabilities. It's just, it doesn't seem like a feasible plan. Here is Sean McCarthy's attitude on this that I thought was really good. He is criticizing Peter Navarro in Financial Times. Peter Navarro's words in Financial Times after reading the piece and his demands. He says, Peter Navarro in Financial Times demands that Europeans eat our hormone beef and salmonella chicken. This is something that I've also talked about quite a bit because those are like the places where we could make up for trade deficits. He says that any state-owned enterprises are cheating. This is also true. This is unironically a big part of the European anger as well. Remember Ursula von der Leyen's words a year ago, where I told you, like, Ursula von der Leyen, I showed you, was like very angry at the subsidies that the Chinese government was giving the electric vehicle companies, and therefore they were making EVs at a price point that made it impossible for European manufacturers to compete with. They consider that cheating. This is the basis. They are mad that a command economy will absolutely dominate global trade. And instead of looking at that and going, wait, why don't we do that? We have unimaginable amounts of wealth. Why don't we also do that? Why don't we also use this wealth to drive wages down, or not drive wages down, sorry, drive prices down while keeping wages up through subsidies? Instead of doing that, they're just saying, like, no, they're just cheating. You should also do it the way we're doing it. Freudian slip, yeah. I can't even fucking entertain a hypothetical scenario where European leadership, European capitalists will ever fucking not drive wages down. That there will not be any negotiation, that the sweatshop slaves Americans exploit for cheap goods have been ripping us off the entire time. Navarro absolutely wants a full-blown trade war with China. This is true. Wall Street is not pricing this in. They're smart people. Maybe they know Navarro will lose influence and Trump will reverse himself here. Maybe they're in denial. Navarro's goal is full-scale reshoring by private capital. Because, and this part is very important, state-owned enterprises are cheating. He has no plan to manage this transition or reduce the pain it would bring to the U.S. consumers. He expects private capital to do it all himself. This is a major problem here. Because the enemy is not China. The enemy is capital. And the American government cannot recognize this because the American government is designed around literally combating that attitude. The American government will never, ever engage in anti-capitalist initiatives, things that actually harm the profit margins. They can't do that. They are not designed to do that. This is precisely the problem. This is also the reason why the reshoring initiative will be a spectacular fucking failure. There's no sign that Trump disagrees with any of this. Both correctly identify U.S. trade deals as a problem, but ideologically they cannot countenance any role for the government in fixing the problem, except for giving free money to connected private sector firms. In China, 9 out of the 10 largest firms are state-owned enterprises. There are state-owned banks for industry and agriculture. There are state-owned petroleum, railway, chemical, and steel companies. Maybe the Chinese system is just better. Maybe if manufacturing and industrial capacity is important to the USA, we should ensure their continued existence through our own state-owned enterprises. Of course, this cannot even be discussed here. It's socialism, and it doesn't work even though it's working fine in China every single day. So we are going to pray to God of the free market to fix this. This short-sightedness is not the stupidity of just the Trump administration alone. This short-sightedness is the reason why the maximum, the best you're going to get is the CHIPS Act. Okay? It is straight up a byproduct of the duopoly that we have in the United States of America, where the most you are going to get out of the Democratic Party, which is supposed to be the ostensibly left party here in this country, is going to be a neoliberal private-public sector partnership where private capital fixes the problem in a magnanimous fashion, and yet they have never done such a thing, and they will never do such a thing. Okay? Of course they are not going to do that. They're just going to take the money and do exactly what they've been doing. Those short-sighted multinational firms who would rather buy back their own stock than invest in R&D are suddenly going to make long-term investments in reshoring in the middle of a massive global recession. We might as well start making human sacrifices at the altar of Milton Friedman at this point. For now, the stock losses are just numbers. In the weeks and months ahead, they will transition to layoffs and consumer price increases, stagflation. At that point, there will be a major pressure to reverse. At that point, it will probably be too late, unless we want to allow some role for the government. No, I didn't think so. I'll be arrogant enough to say I think financial markets are wrong in their belief that Trump will repeat this usual pattern of getting small concessions and dropping the issue. Navarro is in charge until he causes too much damage to be fixed by a simple reversal. If he had his way, we'd all eat shit for the next 4 years while he waited for his cargo cult private capital to solve everything without any defined government plan. Basically, buckle up, and for the love of God, let's start talking about the need for U.S. state-owned enterprises to fix this mess. That's it. That's it. Because as I've said time and time again, the notion that reshoring manufacturing is going to fix this problem is idiotic, because the people that are talking about reshoring manufacturing are actively stating that they have no intention of improving wages. And they have every intention to automate this process so that we can keep prices low. This does not mean better jobs. This does not mean any new jobs at all. This simply means the same wealth disparity that exists and the same depressive forces on the pre-existing jobs that are available still very much exist in this country. People don't want to work in a factory for the sake of working in a factory because they're like super autistic and love being on an assembly line, doing the same fucking steel press motion every day for 8 hours a goddamn day. They like it because they fantasize about the 1965 standard of working a 9 to 5, clocking in, clocking out, and then being able to take care of their children with one fucking parent in a 2-parent household, working and being able to pay for a home and being able to create some semblance of upward social mobility for the next generation because they can go to college and they can pay for college. That's what they're fucking fantasizing about, not the aspect, the menial labor aspect of such things, okay? Very stupid. Baba burada bağırmayın birbirinize ne olur. Kendimi duyamıyorum baba. Düşünemiyorum. Ha. While the WTO technically allows challenges, its dispute resolution system is functionally broken and the consequences have been catastrophic. This dispute resolution system is also functionally broken as a consequence of America undermining the court's power, by the way, the World Trade Organization's power. We did that. The U.S. has brought several high-profile agricultural trade disputes to the WTO, targeting foreign bans on poultry, hormone-treated beef, and genetically modified crops. In nearly every case, the U.S. prevailed, but the victories did not matter. The EU's ban on hormone-treated U.S. beef was challenged in 1996, ruled illegal in 1998, and yet the EU has not lifted it. Name one charity you have donated to that goes directly to improving the material conditions of Palestinians. Wait, what? Dog, I've raised literally multiple millions of dollars for charities that actively work on the ground. What? I effed? Is it effing? What's happening? It's not effing on my end. As someone who makes millions off yapping about the genocide in Palestine, how much of your own money have you donated? Hundreds of thousands of dollars directly to charities and causes that go directly to improving the material conditions of Palestinians via tangible aid and resource before today. And can you prove it? Or are you ever donating your time? Wait, what? Why you act like you don't see important questions? Hello? Are you okay? How did you go from Israel's allowing American to be its hegemon to this attitude in one day? In America, we have a bunch of self-proclaimed socialists and communists that still sell themselves out to capitalism when it suits them. Your complaints until you and your platform can profit from it, though, right? Chatter, most of his chat is fake woke. Oh, never mind. No, he was a hater yesterday, too. He did like my statement on Leon, though. Here, let's unban this guy. He's got great attitude. I didn't ask you nor see proof. Anyone can say he does like I knew someone would. Anyone can say he did, but I didn't ask you. Name one trader you've donated to. Wait. I'm confused. Are you gonna go back on that? Like, yeah, this is one of the many different fundraisers that we've engaged with. Here's $50,000 from me, just one. Now I assume that you're going to turn around and say it's not enough. That's nothing. That's like a tiny margin, right? A tiny margin of your wallet. That's what you're going to say? I unbanned you, by the way. You can respond. Yeah. Here are the funds that went to ANIRA, Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, Palestine Red Crescent Society, and Medical Aid for Palestinians. Anyway, I hope you get better, chatter. Don't take the bait. I mean, it's okay. Some people probably didn't know that. Maybe they learned about it today. It's all good. Maybe that person was just genuinely confused. These aids do not reach Palestinians anyway. That's not true. That absolutely is wrong. You're wrong about that. As a matter of fact, when an aid organization is no longer able to work directly on the ground, we change our fundraising efforts. And we work with other aid organizations, like in the Creators for Palestine charity. We did other aid organizations that were still actively working on the ground. So you're wrong about that too. Why is this guy not responding? I'm so confused. What happened? It's been 4 minutes. Did he die? Okay. That's somewhat of a satisfactory answer. Hope it motivated more people to donate. Oh, thanks. Thanks, chatter. I'm glad. Yeah, you did your part, dude. So much of this attitude unironically revolves around I didn't know a certain thing, or rather someone lied to me about you, and that is somehow your fucking problem. But now that I know the truth, I'm still going to take this like weird ass fucking attitude. Somewhat of a satisfactory answer. I give you direct fucking receipts. What do you mean somewhat? Hey, at least he didn't double down. Well, I put my money where my mouth is and asked the important questions. No, dude, you just didn't Google the important questions. You could have Googled this important question and found the answer yourself. But instead of doing that, you came in here with a snarky ass attitude. It's all right. At least you recognize that I was, at least you recognize that you were wrong. And then he acts like this silly ass question in a pro-Palestinian community is going to urge more people to donate. Thank God. Like, it was actually for good reason. So Google is going to tell me better than you how much you donated? Yes. Unironically, yes. And how am I wrong when only asked the question? I was just simply asking a question. You didn't ask a question. The question would be, hey, how much of your time, and I know that because you know that I've done fundraisers, okay? Okay, so obviously you could have just easily Googled it. And if you couldn't find the answer, you could be like, hey, I know you're very pro-Palestine, and I was wondering, because I had an argument with a friend or whatever, that I wanted to know how much you have directly contributed to these fundraisers. I couldn't find it on Google. That's a great way to ask that question. Not, as someone who makes millions off of yapping about the genocide in Palestine, how much of your own money have you donated directly to charities and causes that go directly to improving the material conditions of Palestinians via tangible aid and resource before today? And can you prove it? Or are you only ever donating your time? That's not asking a question. You already have an answer in your mind on that question. You're just snarking. You're implying that I'm actually fake and phony. You're being rude and an asshole and engaging in bad faith and then trying to massage your way out of it and being like, I just only asked the question. We all know what you were doing. I was gracious enough to actually answer you instead of going, hey, I'm sorry. I was wrong about this. I was lied to, and I'm going to reconsider the people that have lied to me about this shit and whether they are being honest next time around. You still fucking yell at me over it. I implied it would have been fake if you hadn't. Okay, chatter. Thanks. We all know what you're doing. 38,000 people in here. Every single person knows exactly what the fuck you're doing. Absolutely no one thinks this was a genuine question. Yapping about genocide, he fucking says. This is not a negotiation. For the U.S., it's a national emergency triggered by trade deficits caused by a rigged system. President Trump is always willing to listen, but to those world leaders who, after decades of cheating, are suddenly offering lower tariffs, know this is just the beginning. It's not about tariffs, okay? It is not about tariffs. It's about trade deficits, and it's about also stopping the Chinese manufacturing dominance around the globe because it gives China too much power.
中方对中美经贸关系的立场已经讲得很清楚了。听到这位副总统说出这样无知又缺乏礼貌的话，令人诧异，也感到悲哀。美方滥施关税，严重侵犯各国的正当权益，严重违反世界贸易组织规则，严重损害以规则为基础的多边贸易体制，严重冲击全球的经济秩序稳定，是典型的单边主义。
This is a typical example of unilateralism, protectionism, and economic
保护主义、
bullying.
经济霸凌，遭到国际社会
And it's been
普遍
widely
反对
opposed。by the international
中方对
community.
此
China
强
strongly
烈
condemns
谴
and
责，
firmly opposes
坚
such
决
actions.
我要再次
I
强
would
调
like to，reiterate that there are no
贸易
winners in a
战、
trade war or a
关
tariff
税战
war.
没有赢家，保护主义没有出路。
Protectionism offers no way out.
中国人不惹事，
These
也不怕
the
事，
Chinese people do not provoke trouble, but we are not afraid of it.
施压、威胁和讹诈不是同中方打交道的正确方式。中方
China will take all necessary
必将
countermeasures
采取必要措施，坚决维护
to
自身
resolutely
正当合法
safeguard its
权益。
legitimate and lawful rights and interests.
我想美方的
The actions of the U.S.
所
side
作
have
所
not
为
demonstrated any
没有
genuine
体现
willingness
出
for
想要
serious
认真对话
dialogue.
的意愿。美方如果真的想谈，
If the U.S. truly wishes to
就应
engage
该
in
拿出
talks, it should
平
adopt
等、
an attitude of equality,
尊重、
mutual respect,
互
and
惠的态度。
reciprocity.
如果美方置两国
If it persists
和
in
国际社会
disregarding
的
the common
利益
interests of
不顾
both countries and the
打
international
关税
community
战
and insists on
贸易
escalating the
战
trade and tariff
中
conflict,
方必将
China
奉回到
will,
底。
as always, fight to the end. So they've signaled that they're not going to stop. On the other hand, Trump, for some weird, indecipherable purpose, thinks that he will absolutely stop. What is this? As an American from a semi-affluent upper middle class background, this video is full of knowledge I've craved and have been denied by uninformed ideologues and Western media. Thank you. This is from 4 months ago from a channel called Red Pen, a summary of Xi Jinping's governance of China. I kind of want to watch this. We might actually dive into that after this.
A tit-for-tat trade war. Markets are dreading it, and most world leaders are trying to avoid it, but not China. It's hit back with a 34% tariff of its own. It's taking the fight to Trump, and this is what escalation looks like. When Trump first came to power, US tariffs on Chinese goods weren't much higher than they were on the rest of the world. But Trump, across his 2 presidencies, has amped up the pressure. Within months of coming into power the second time round, he slapped a 10% tariff on China, then another 10% in March. And that was before Liberation Day, where he hit the country with another 34%. China hit back with 34% of its own. So Trump, well, he threatened, as you can see here, 50%. That would take the effective tariff to 124%. At that level, you're effectively shutting down trade. And this is why he's doing it. His least favourite chart. It shows the US is importing far more from China than China takes back. The deficit's been building steadily. It accelerated in the 2000s after China joined the World Trade Organization and Beijing reformed the economy, boosting exports of electronics, toys, machinery, building what we now call the world's factory. Well, Trump, he's been trying to shut it down. And his mechanism for doing that is tariffs. China is defiant, though. It says it can withstand a Trump assault. And as you can see here, it has become less dependent on the US market for its exports. This is the percentage of Chinese goods going directly to the US. But it doesn't tell us how much trade China has been diverting through other Asian countries like Vietnam, for example, to dodge US tariffs. Well, Trump has wised up to that. He's imposed crippling tariffs on countries across Asia, shutting down those routes. And for all its fighting talk, China does want to negotiate because it will feel economic pain from this, as will US exporters who sent $143 billion worth of goods to China. Prices will go up for consumers, growth will slow. And among it all, it's hard to see who the winners will be.
Mistake upon a mistake. Overnight, China hurled these new accusations at President Trump as it took action, bracing for a real trade slugfest. President Trump is now promising a new 50% tariff on China, on top of the other new tariffs, which are on top of existing tariffs. Combined, this would make U.S. tariffs on imports from China a whopping 104%. And yet, despite all this tough talk, the markets, they seem a little less agitated this morning. After days of these massive losses and trillions of dollars in value evaporated, U.S. stock futures are pointing up, for now at least. It comes, and it may be because of the fact that some members of his administration have relented on their no negotiation stance. Some members of the administration. The markets in Asia, you can see right there, most of them rebounded after their sharp sell-offs. This comes, though, as China accused the U.S. of blackmail, and China is vowing to, quote, fight to the end if the president moves ahead with all of his threats. So let's get right to CNN's Mark Stewart in Beijing here, because the rest of Asia is in a different place than China is right now, and China really seems to be gearing up for a serious fight.
Indeed, John, despite what the White House may want, China and Beijing is making it very clear that it's not going to budge. And once again today, we saw this shift from diplomatic language to something that's
China defined after Trump threatens additional 50% tariffs. China is escalating after Donald Trump started this. China is not escalating. They're not escalating. They're reciprocating. These tariffs are reciprocal. And I think what's interesting about this process is that maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe I don't know the normies and their attitude here. But regardless of the xenophobia that they demonstrate on a regular basis, I think Trump doing this in a spectacularly belligerent manner is even causing the dumbest of Americans to go, I don't know if this is because of China that we are being harmed here. Like, I don't think, especially because he's directly undermining treats. The treatlerites themselves, I think, are looking at this and going, yeah, I think you're the one who's fucking up the bag here, not China. To use a metaphor, the Chinese economy is not a pond, but an ocean. The ocean may have its calm days. What's up, Beijing? But big winds and storms are only to be expected. Without them, the ocean wouldn't be what it is. Big winds and storms may upset a pond, but never an ocean. Having experienced numerous winds and storms, the ocean will still be there. It is the same for China after going through 5,000 years of trials and tribulations. China is still here. Looking ahead, China will always be here to stay. 5th of November 2018, opening ceremony of the first China International Import Expo. Senior research fellow at Channel 4 News being interviewed. Senior research fellow says trade war is a blessing in disguise for Xi. Time stamped. Let's take a look.
Rise up. How much will the Chinese economy be able to cope without that trade?
Well, interesting to say this. I mean, 34% or 50%, it doesn't make much difference at all regarding the Chinese economy, because essentially what Xi Jinping wanted to do, it is want to achieve that sense of technology self-reliance. It wants to achieve that sense of economic self-reliance. So to some extent, this trade war come almost like a blessing in disguise for Xi Jinping, for him to be able to boosting domestic consumption that he's aiming to do. But however,
yeah, this was another aspect of the Chinese economy that they were trying to work on anyway, which was boosting domestic consumption of domestic goods. So this basically is a forceful way to do that.
Let's put it this way. I think in the short term, it will be extremely painful for the Chinese economy to be able to make that transition. So I think in the short term, it will be something quite disheartening for the Chinese population.
The difference here, however, is that the Chinese government is well equipped to be able to withstand these sorts of shocks because of its centralized planning structure. When all the banks are owned by the government, when all the trades are owned by the government, when all the businesses are owned by the government, they have a lot more power to restructure their economy virtually overnight. When the government, on the other hand, works at the behest of capitalist corporations in a place like the United States of America, they do not have this kind of fast-paced restructuring that China can engage in. This does not mean that there won't be impacts. This does not mean that there won't be issues in the short term. But if there is a country that is able to overcome these economic shocks, it is a country that has a central planned economy. This is precisely the reason why, when a lot of the analysts in the West made a great ordeal over the real estate issues that took place, like the was it Evergreen disaster in China, the reality inside of China was Evergrande disaster. The reality internally in China was very different. Oh, Mhud, I already watched pieces of this, and then I stopped watching it because it was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Greg Buttfeld talking about how the tariffs are going to be the ultimate testosterone because they're so stupid. It's only a matter of time before Trump says if countries want to avoid tariffs, they can become part of the U.S. He said that in a way that Canada can avoid tariffs. Yeah, I mean, that's not going to happen. Do you see what I'm saying, though? Like, America for far too long has been able to dominate countries that have less diverse industry, less diverse economies, like single resource economies like Venezuela that weren't able to quickly and rapidly diversify with the state sector coming into agriculture, for example, and suffered grave consequences as a consequence of that. I mean, suffered grave consequences with America's sanctions regime. Venezuela is a great example of this. America is able to dominate Venezuela, but I don't think America can dominate China with the same ease, because not only do they have a robust, not only do they have a central planned economy, but they also have a robust manufacturing capability where they can overcome external pressures and external shocks such as this one, even if in the short term they stand to lose. I think that it's rapid urbanization, its even development will, and also its infrastructure will able to withstand these sorts of outside pressures.
Population as well.
As we said at the beginning of the program, it's the politics, stupid, not just the economics. How much of this is a political standoff between the United States, the existing superpower, trying to contain China, and China flexing its muscles to show to its own people and the rest of the world that it's very much arrived on the stage?
Well, absolutely. I think on the one hand, it is more to do with the domestic public opinion towards the United States. I think really throughout the last 8 years, the Chinese public opinion has really been shifted from that sense of admiration towards the United States into the very deep, strong sense of anxiety and annoyance. So Xi Jinping will have to respond to that sense of public opinion. That is to say, he cannot afford to look soft in front of President Trump. That's one layer. Now, I think the second layer in here, as we said, is all about politics. It's also about that China try to somehow upholding the international trading system that he felt, or the Chinese felt, Donald Trump have done something essentially wrong, and hence China want to continue to holding that international trading system for that. So I think there's two layers. One is for domestic reason, but the other is also for international reason as well. And obviously, other countries watching these two to tango very carefully and see how they're going to play their own cards at the same time.
Very briefly, before we move on to something else, do you think this could actually become a proper war, between China and the United States? Because often that's what happens with trade wars.
Well, interesting enough, I think for Donald Trump, he's most likely to waging a trade war against China rather than waging a real military escalation towards China. It's not really in Donald Trump's mindset that it's all about military conflict. But I think instead, what he's trying to do is trying to addressing this sense of the difficulties that the American population has suffered. And then on the other hand, I think the Chinese also would prefer to deal with this in economic terms rather than the military terms.
Now, here in Washington, Donald Trump's team argue that their tariffs are a kind of shock therapy designed to reset the global economy in America's favor. But
for the record, regardless of my regardless of the fact that regardless of my advocacy against free trade, I am not in favor of trade isolationism to a degree where like every country has to do Jusha style manufacturing. Okay, every country is a Marxist, Leninist, Jushaist, like the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and that we have to do self-sustaining. We have to have a self-sustaining economy across the board. Okay, I think that's kind of stupid. You know, there are like, I like drinking coffee. Okay, I'm a fan of drinking coffee, which means automatically that I'm not in favor of this, because you can't have it. You just can't build it here. That's not a thing that you can do. I like bananas. It's like one of the few fruits that I consume. You're spot on about this being similar to the decline of the USSR. The Trump admin is even calling it shock therapy. Pretty wild that they think this is going to solve anything. Yeah.
The immediate effect of chaos is already hitting people across the United States, from pensions to car prices. It's even sent Trump's bestie, Elon Musk, over the edge.
Trump's bestie,